Welcome to the Pharmacy Podcast. Join us as we delve into the dynamic world of pharmacy, exploring the latest trends, innovations, and insights that shape the industry. Our podcast is proudly brought to you by the Independent Pharmacies of Australia Group, IPA, dedicated to supporting independent and bannered pharmacies nationwide. We're committed to connecting all member pharmacies under the IPA national brand, recognized by Australians for elevating community healthcare to meet local needs. Our vision drives our mission to empower pharmacists and pharmacy professionals. From discussions on healthcare advancements and regulatory updates to interviews with industry experts and success stories from pharmacy professionals, we cover it all. Our goal is to inspire and equip pharmacists to thrive in today's ever-evolving landscape while championing the values of independence, community, and excellence. Today, we have a truly special guest, someone who is revolutionizing the way pharmacies manage one of their most critical assets, inventory. Joining us is John Kardis, a pharmacist, director at IPA, and founder of BiteRight, an incredible platform that uses algorithm-based technology to automate inventory management, ensuring that pharmacies are always stocked with the right product at the right time. Whether it's prescription medicines or retail items, John's platform keeps things running smoothly, eliminates waste, boosts efficiencies, and helps pharmacies grow their margins. But this conversation goes beyond the numbers and the algorithms. We'll be diving into John's journey, how he turned a problem into a solution, and even take a fun detour into the future of automation. Plus, we'll explore what everyday life would look like if John could apply his automation magic outside of the pharmacy. So sit back, relax, and get ready for an insightful and fun chat about the future of pharmacy management and how one man is changing the game. John, I've actually never sat down with you and had almost like a coffee fireside chat with you regarding how you actually started in pharmacy and how long you've been doing pharmacy. Because I'll be very honest, when I first got introduced to you, and that was at APP maybe about 2 years ago, and we had just newly formed the merger, and we had gone through one of our mergers where Advantage, CDC, which is Chemist Discount Center, Catalyst had come together, and someone pointed out and was like, "That's John." And I was like, "What do you mean? He's a pharmacist. He started this whole group, this whole merger, and he was part of the boys." And I just heard the boys. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, he does not look like your stereotypical pharmacist." So tell me, what was your journey like?
It was a bit of a tough journey at the start. So I actually started off at Melbourne State College, which was a teacher's college, because I actually didn't get enough marks to get into pharmacy. And it was actually a mate of mine that said, "Oh, maybe you should do pharmacy." And I go, "Oh, that sounds like a pretty good idea." But I needed to improve my marks. So I actually went to Melbourne State College for a year, worked really hard at it, and then managed to transfer across to Victorian Pharmacy College, as it was known back then. So that's where my journey started. And then that's where I met Steve Kastronakis, my business partner. So we went to uni together, went through uni, and he stayed on to do his master's, and I started working in my first job because I thought, "Oh, wow, how am I going to get enough money to buy a pharmacy?" I was doing midnight till 8 a.m. shifts, 5 days a week, because I'd get double pay, and I was like, "Wow, this is good."
Yeah.
So I did that for a year, and then Steve said, "Let's go buy a pharmacy." And I said, "That's a great idea." We're both city-based in Melbourne, and we found a pharmacy that we could afford up in Moe, country Victoria, 1.5 hours, and I'd never been to the country, so we jumped in my mum's car.
I love that.
Drove to Moe, had a look and go, "Wow." I go, "Look, we can just forget the whole thing. Let's just drive back to Melbourne and we've only lost the petrol. It's okay. And we sat on it for a little bit longer, and then we thought, oh, let's go for another look. So we went back up, and we thought, let's give it a go. What's the worst thing that can happen? We'll go broke, go back home, live with our parents for a little bit longer, and we're done. So
That
we
was the
managed not to go. Yeah, we managed not to go broke, and it was look, it was a steep learning curve. We didn't know. All I remember is we're in a rented house, and we had paperwork everywhere over the floor because we didn't know the difference between an invoice and a statement. So we quickly worked it out, and then we sat there and thought, wow, we've got enough money to pay all these bills. But that was the start of the journey, and then obviously from Moe we grew from there, and then Michael Gray came along a few years later and started working with us, and gradually momentum's brought us to where we are today. And I
it's
suppose I wanted to get out of after a while, I dispensed forever. I really enjoyed dispensing, the interaction with the customers and chatting, and we're predominantly country based, and I really enjoyed it because you knew the whole community.
yes, very true.
Yeah.
It's I always preferred country as well because it just makes going to work so worthwhile. But Metro has its upsides as well. So yeah. So from Moe, when you started with Steve, was it sort of a gradual progression or did it just balloon? How did it balloon to where it got to where in 1992, if memory serves correctly, you
Correct.
were
Yeah,
opening
92 we
up sort
started.
of the Gippsland Pharmacy Group?
Well, correct. So in 1992, that's when we purchased our first shop in Moe, and then 94 we purchased a shop down in St Kilda, and then I worked there for till about 95 because I was like the traveling salesman. I'd go from shop to shop if we got another shop, and I enjoyed it, but it was a lot of nursing home work, and I'm not sure. I'm probably not cut out for nursing home work and Webster packet, and that was DOSET boxes back then, and get your little DOSET boxes, and so we ended up getting a shop in Drawn a few years later, and back then it was probably easier to get involved in pharmacy. There was obviously we had a bit of rubber on the road. We had some traction. Our wholesaler back then, the wholesalers used to help guarantee the loans with the bank.
Yeah.
So that was our in. Otherwise, we never would have been able to afford to purchase our first shop without the ability of the wholesalers to help us. And then from there, we obviously new business partners came along, and we created a relationship with a group called Finlay and Weymouth. And Finlay and Weymouth had pharmacies from Sale all the way up to Bairnsdale. And then we created the GPG group, Gippsland Pharmacy Group. And we started doing our own catalogues. And Steve sort of headed that up more with a fellow by the name of Peter Jones, who used to be the chair of Sigma Pharmaceuticals. So we'd meet up on like a fortnightly basis where we would, swap ideas. We weren't competitors with each other. And because we were sort of in that Gippsland strip, we thought, we can do our own catalogues. We can do buying together. We'd go on trips overseas, purchasing trips together with them. And that's how GBG started. And then members started reaching out to us saying, look, we'd like to do those catalogues, but BPG was only good for Gippsland. So that's when we changed our name to the Advantage Pharmacy Group. And then we started having other external members come join us. And early, back in those days, like we're talking probably late, 98, 99, early 2000s. And Steve's better with dates than myself, but we met Michael Flannery. And I remember going and meeting Michael up in Sydney. They had a club card where it was like a thermal club card where different offers were getting printed on the club card and so forth. And that's how I met Michael for the first time
Okay.
with his
And
team.
then from there, from meeting Michael to then becoming what we are today, how does that, it must be mind blowing when you think that you started off driving to Maui in your mom's car.
Yeah.
And
I,
where, yeah.
Look, I suppose we never planned to do what we did, but I suppose I was always pretty ambitious. I enjoy the work I do. I enjoy you like when you're involved in your own business, you want to always keep achieving more because it's just what drives you to go to work every day. And you're always collaborating with people and there's always new opportunities. So whenever an opportunity came, and it was good because it wasn't just myself, there was Michael Gray, there was Steve, and you sort of bounce off each other. So you're not going to be, up and punching every single day, but you've got your other team members that are there and you look at things differently. And when you're down, they're up. When they're down, you're up. And that's the momentum that's really taken us to where we are today. And I never, I always thought, wow, will I ever have more than one shop? Will I ever be involved in more than one thing? And I suppose when you're young, you think one shop's great. If I can do that, I'm really happy. And then you go, will we ever get our second shop? And you sort of do it. And you're young and you're happy to take those risks. As you get older, you're a little bit more risk adverse.
Yeah,
and
true.
Sometimes I think now it takes me longer to make a decision than it did when I was like 35. When I was 35, yep.
Yeah.
We would be able to hop in a car, drive, half an hour, discuss a shop, get there, land, buy it, and then leave. Now it's like all the rigmarole that you go through and all the extra boxes you've got to tick. It's extended that, but where we are today, and I think we've got to where we are because we're very like-minded. When we joined with Warwick and Michael's group, and we formed. Geez, I've forgotten all the different names that we've had. Melody, like
we had
transition.
platform, and then we had.
Platform Alliance.
We now are Independent Pharmacies of Australia, so IPA.
Yeah, so we've had all those transitions, and it's been good, and the team's got bigger, and we've got so many more people in different expertise of areas. It's been fantastic. The journey's been good. I'm happy with it.
It's been astounding actually to hear the story of how from started off teaching to now being part of Independent Pharmacies of Australia with over 1,000 members nationwide. But going back to probably when you first started, what would have been the challenges, the hurdles of adding on more pharmacies as you grew? Surely you couldn't do business as usual with one as you do with 5 or as you do with 10. Something's got to give, something's got to change. What made you pivot? What were the pivots that you had to make?
Well, you quickly find you can run one shop very easily by yourself. You're there, you're across everything. 2 shops, you go, yeah, no, not a problem. 3. As you start expanding, you don't have that control. You're not in it. You can't communicate with your staff as often as you normally would if it was on a one-on-one sort of scenario. So that expansion, like we'd sit down and chat, and we knew we were losing control of the shops. We weren't in the control that we expected, and we couldn't measure the shops as because back then the IT platforms and systems weren't as sophisticated to manage things from a distance.
Yeah.
A lot of the management was done in store. It was, the local knowledge of being in there. And to be able to expand and have more stores, we needed to put processes in place. And at the end of the financial year, so back then we would work out our wages to turnover at the end of the financial year.
Yeah.
Like if you did that now, I don't think you'd last in business. What the value of your stock on hand was back then, it was just, oh yeah, I think it's about that. It was not what it was. And the implications of not knowing these things can be diabolical, like it can be disastrous. So back in 2008, we thought we've got to control our stock.
Mm-hmm.
We've got to control our IT, and we need to know where shops are without actually being in them, because without having IT infrastructure, how do you sit at an external office and have any input in a store without actually seeing data coming from the store. So data's everything. Data's the source of truth and the source of where your problems are. So we invested heavily back in 2008, which has pretty much brought me to the journey where I am today because of that initial investment. There's no way I would have predicted in 2008 I'd be doing what I'm doing today.
Okay.
And even though we started the platform that I look after, which is called Buy It Right, even though we started that platform, I think it was in 2009, we still make changes. Like 15 years later, we're still making changes to it because there's just so many permutations and combinations. So ordering is very basic and simple. It's not until you get into the detail of it you realize how complex it is. We wanted to create a brand.
Okay.
So we created the Chemist Discount Centre brand, CDC.
Yes.
And we wanted to make a competitive brand. And we didn't want to go out and roll out a competitive brand without having the controls or the insights to actually what's happening in that store. So we actually used our own shops as practice from an IT perspective, running the brand and making sure that we knew what margin we were delivering and we could prove what that margin was. Were we happy to actually roll it out to any third-party people? Because it wasn't about trying to make excuses or, plug up little gaps. It was like, we've just got to make sure this thing's robust. We've got the processes in place. So when we go to a third-party person or a pharmacy that is potentially looking at it, we had to have confidence in what we're delivering, and we needed to have the answers for everything. So having a robust IT infrastructure, whether it be from the POS through to the data, through to how you purchase, we had to make sure we could answer every question.
So, John, when I'm going to go back to Bite Right. So when you came up with Bite Right, I take it was a group effort, or was it a solo effort? Because you've just opened up a whole can of worms here, because I got so many questions. Like, I want to know, what was the conversation like in that room, or what was the conversation like with yourself to say, we need to do Bite Right? Because back then, there would have been so many things you could have done. What made you say, okay, this is the direction we need to go? Stock is the direction we need to look at, as opposed to maybe customer service or loyalty. Why that direction, and who was in the room? And what was the conversation like?
So I sort of leant more towards IT rather than customer service, professional services. And when we first made that change, we actually got an external provider to do our point of sale system. And when you start, it was an ERP system called Epicor, and implementing ERP systems is quite complex, and we had to go get professional help to do it. And we invested in excess of $2 million in our POS system, and we had Fred Dispense sitting on top of it. And we got there, and even though you're explaining to the people who are doing the implementation with you, what pharmacy is, how we do orders, they created a product, and then we went to start doing the orders, and it was like, wow, that's not doing the order I thought it would do. And then you start chatting to them, and when you chat with these consultants, it's expensive. It's $10,000 a conversation, $20,000 for a modification, or $150,000 in the can. We weren't getting anywhere, so I thought, no, we've got to stop this. So we'd invested the money. We couldn't go backwards. We couldn't get rid of the system. We had to work out a solution. So then we had a programmer come in, and in the interim, before Buy It Right was created, we had our stores. We had about a dozen stores in the system, 12 or 15 stores in the system between the small group that we were running at that point. And we thought, wow, how are we going to do this? So I was sitting in spreadsheets till midnight, because our Sigma cutoff was at midnight, getting the data, churning it around, pushing the orders in. Otherwise, we'd get no stock. And that's what literally would happen. I'd go home and do that. And that's why Buy It Right was created. So I thought, okay, this is the workflow that I want. Can you program it? Then we can just get the data straight out of the system And then from there, it just grew from there.
So the problem it was solving was you staying up until midnight to do orders on a spreadsheet.
Correct.
Okay. So from that problem that it was solving, how did then, because right now, how many pharmacies use BiteRite in
So we've
Australia?
onboarded approximately 550 stores. And so they're all not using it. They're all in different stages of it, but the majority are. And just to give context to it, up until our last merger, we were only connected to one point of sale system at that point, Melody.
Mm-hmm.
So we were on Fred Next, because eventually that original system that we had implemented back in 2008 was coming to the end of life. To renew that, it was probably $1 million spend.
Mm.
And at that point, Fred had Fred Next, which is an ERP system, and for us to implement it, given all the what we call bolt-ons that we had done with our previous ERP system, enabled us to interact with Fred really quickly, hop on, run. And we actually did our first installation mid-December 2015, and the shop ordered the next day. So we were familiar with the ERP environment. We knew what data we needed. Fred could deliver that data. We got it. We're up and running. We tested for a while, and then from there we rolled out. And currently in our Fred Next environment, we've got 100 stores. So up until 2 years ago, we probably had about 80 stores on the platform. And we were limited. BiteRite was limited because it only interacted with Fred Next. Then we made the decision that we needed to. Not everyone wanted to come onto that platform. They were happy with their current platforms they're on. So we quickly worked out that we had to develop BiteRite to be its own solution.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we did is we lifted it off the Fred platform. And when I say we lifted it off, it was the way the data was flowing. Rather than the data coming back to BiteRite, BiteRite was the source of data flowing down the other way. And then we had stock information coming back our way, because what we need is to know what the stock on hand is, in essence, and a few other things.
Mm-hmm.
So once we achieved that, we managed to open up our market, and that enabled us to deal with Fred Office, Zed, Quorum, and now we're working with Minfos, and we're just checking out. So Minfos is brand new for us. So we've opened up I suppose we've opened up some more blue sky for ourselves.
So I've worked in a pharmacy. I've been the one doing the orders in a pharmacy. What makes BiteRite different from what we're already doing right now?
So and I tend to go into too much detail and I get told off, but with ordering's pretty simple. Like you sell something, you sell one, you buy one.
Yes.
That's how simple ordering is. You sell one, you buy one. And then where it gets a little bit more complex is then obviously suppliers like to they need to create volume, and they create deals. Create volume because they want you to purchase more, which is reasonable. So then what you've got to do is, and if it's simple, if it's like, you've only got to buy 3 or 6, that's pretty easy. You can program into your point of sale system whenever this orders, order me 3 or order me 6. Then the decisions you've got to make are, how many am I really selling per month? And does it warrant it to buy 6 or 12 or 18? And if you're running the one store and you've got a really good RM, you can do it. And then you use a little bit of best guess. You use your system, but point of sale systems tend to be more geared up. Not all of them, but in general, geared up for selling, dispensing, accounts. That's their KPI, so to speak. Whereas what we did is we looked at it from the perspective. I don't want to create a point of sale system. I want to create a purchasing platform that understands my rate of sale. When there is a deal, what items are in that deal, and I want to make sure I purchase them at the right quantity and volume that meets that rate of sale without buying excessive quantities. I wanted to get rid of the best guess, because what happened back then in pharmacy is if you lost your main RM, or if you weren't there, all the information's in your head. We had to take the information out of someone's head and put it into a system. So if that person, they can go on holidays, or they can go on holidays and the store keeps operating. And I've got to say, when I reflect back in the early 90s, like we'd do orders and the rep would come in, and it's easy because you think in 6s and 12s and gross levels, and you go, yep, I'll buy that. You buy it just with the intention that you believe you're going to sell it and you're going to recommend it. We just brought a lot more science across in that. And one of the problems is where do I buy that item from? Like, who do I buy it from? Do I buy that from the wholesaler? Do I have to go to Blackmores to buy that? Do I go to Inner Health to buy that? Like, where am I buying that product? And what volume or value do I need to buy it in? So we put it all into a system that just splits it all up into the subsets that you need. And then it gives you enough information where you can make a conscious decision to purchase that product, and it's going to be not excessive, or it is an excessive amount. Do you want to go through with it? And it's sort of eyes wide open. You're going to buy 6 months worth of stock. Are you happy with purchasing 6 months worth of stock?
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the reasons you do it. The other reason is if you look at a store like for example, a medium-sized store, medium to larger size store, we'll run planograms for 6,000 items. How's anyone going to work out an order for 6,000 items and where to order it from? You can't. It's not possible. Or you'll have someone full-time doing the ordering. So pretty much, we're not trying to replace that person from full-time ordering. What we're trying to do is free them up to go do better, more meaningful tasks for that pharmacy, and whether that's from liaising with customers, with their own team, and really bring that ordering component down to, I've got to do my orders within 30 minutes. You can do it.
So let me get this right. So, because when you were talking about it, I was sort of thinking, okay, so I'm going to have to spend time looking for deals, but then Bite Right sort of helps me look for deals. And then when you mentioned about a stock controller freeing up more time, so using the Bite Right system actually frees up more time, because we've had stock controllers in pharmacy. They sit at the back. They do the ordering. They also receive the stock when it comes. They're the ones who also walk around the pharmacy with a clipboard and look for gaps. So very familiar. And they can spend the whole day doing this. Perfect, because stock is one of our biggest investments in pharmacy. So Bite Right then halves the time?
Yeah, so Bite Right does all of that for you. And I was actually chatting with the store the other day, and they said, oh, look, and we're transitioning them. And they said, oh, look, I go around the shelves and I look for the gaps.
Yeah, we all do.
Look, you've just had a stock take done. Your gaps are on the system now. Just open up your order, and wherever it says 0, that's a gap on your shelf. There's your gaps. I go, how are you going to walk around the shop? Stop. Go place your orders. And obviously you've got to go for a walk around your shop, as you should, face it up and make sure it's presented correctly. And possibly there are gaps there that we're not ordering, and go and have a look at what that problem is. The stock out the back, is it on order already? Is something gone wrong with an invoice? Has someone taken it? You tend not to lose stock through theft. It tends to be some operational issue if you've got a stock on hand problem. Mm-hmm. So, so primarily you save time, because all those processes are thrown out. You get rid of them. There obviously is a certain amount of hygiene you've got to keep around the system. So the more effort you put onto a automated system, the better the returns are over a period of time. It's a complicated system for implementation, but we've got to make it try and look simple for the user. So that's our challenge, and we're always trying to work out how we can improve that. And when you start using, Melody, just to extend it out from there, when you start using these type of platforms and start automating things and start knowing what your product range is, and then you start actually getting really good data coming back, you're getting this great information, you can make decisions because you've got forecasts, you've got rate of sale, you know what your dead stock is. Then you start looking at things like, how else can I improve the workflow in my business? And that's when you start, and that's what we're looking at now, electronic shelf labels and the benefits electronic shelf labels can bring to a store and what sort of efficiencies they can create. And if you're already looking after your IT platform, stock, inventory, cleanliness around your stock file, implementing something like this is relatively easy because everything's lined up nicely, and then you can start rolling, these more sophisticated things into your business and think of how much time that saves, or your ability to change all your pricing overnight. You might need to become more competitive. You might want to try and improve your margin, and 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 you can't do that unless you set up all this base work nice and tidy. So you need a really good stable foundation. You've got to make sure you're not using your POS as a glorified till.
I think we already do that.
Yeah. So you've got to make sure, like, it is a till, but you've got to use your POS, because what you want to get out of it is the data. And when I start showing, you're really doing all this for data. And when people start seeing their data, and look, I live in spreadsheets. Spreadsheets are fantastic. You can have all the pretty pictures and all that sort of stuff, but when you want to start digging in for problems, you're getting spreadsheets. You're looking in Excel spreadsheets. So it's not uncommon for us to coach people on how to use Excel, what to go looking for, where we think the problem is. And we do that. And I'm not sure. I've spoken to hundreds of people and spent, thousands of hours one-on-one, because for me, I've got to engage with our customers. Mm-hmm. I've got to make sure they can see what they need to see and understand where the gaps are, and then teach them to go fish for themselves. And then they'll always come up against something a little bit curly, but they reach out. That's what we're here for.
So you've spoken to thousands and had one-on-ones, you've just said. In your experience, what's the most common mistake pharmacies make when it comes to managing inventory?
Whether you call it a mistake or not a mistake, people have got to be in control of the range that they want to stock. They've got to have clear guidelines for their staff. What is our range? I don't think people should make ad hoc decisions. Let's do this or let's do that. They really need to understand what range they want to stock and work out the best way to get that. That's probably one of the bigger mistakes, because commonly the owner, it's not necessarily the person who owns the pharmacy that should decide what the range is, but the person who's doing it, when they do bring in these new ranges, they can measure them and they can understand. And it's not because they've been sold a dream. Okay. Because in pharmacy, we've got blockbuster items that sell really well, mm-hmm. and there's a very long tail, and you've got to manage that long tail. And a good buy on everything for half a dozens, from what I've seen, is not a good buy, because if you're only selling one a month, and it's quite common in normal retail pharmacy, you don't want to buy in half dozens, because it may not be necessary. So the common mistake is people will guess their order, be in a rush, and place what they believe is good, but it's not. The basis has got to be on a forecast, historical sales, and what you can see in front of you. And when we first started rolling out, for us, we've got to educate the suppliers. Not educate the suppliers, that's probably the wrong word, but we need to give the suppliers the visibility that we have, so they can understand what's actually really happening in that pharmacy. Because otherwise we're thinking of something, we're believing of something which may not necessarily be what's actually really happening. So the platform can open up information to those suppliers, so everyone's looking at the same page, and you can buy more stock. You can do it, but just make sure you recommend it and sell it through, because if it's not selling now, it won't sell later because you got more on the shelf.
So just to summarize everything we've just been discussing for the last 10 minutes, BiteRight is an automated system that has an algorithm in the back end that enables a pharmacy to buy products from the wholesalers at the right price, because we talked about the deals just before. We're also buying it at the right time, because I think we just mentioned about, is that deal right for me then, or is it is that what I need now? Even though they're saying there's 12, do I need 12?
Yes.
Right?
Yes. So what
Um,
keep going, sorry, Melody.
Time, price. I think you touched on price as well, because of the deals that the wholesalers you'll be working with to actually enable that to be part of the algorithm. Have I gotten
Yes.
that correct?
You have, Melody. Correct. So we do automated orders. So there's two levels to automation with orders. Just to explain what that means is orders get calculated every half an hour. So we read the point of sale system every 30 minutes. Every half hour we update the orders, and in general that's more than enough, because when you're purchasing stock, you're purchasing obviously you're purchasing off historical sales where you've got a forecast and you're purchasing into the future,
Yeah.
and you're not purchasing for tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay. So keeping that in mind, so we will create all the orders, which is an automated process, and then stores, once they're comfortable with the system, those orders that meet all the minimum requirements, that they've achieved a deal, there's no excessive stock on them, and the ratio from stock that is um, necessary compared to items which are just helping the order get to say a dollar or a volume value, um, meets a minimum threshold. Those orders can actually be pre-scheduled to transmit at a particular day or time every day, or once a week, or once a fortnight, or once a month. A common one that we do in that is that all the wholesalers will do like a bulk PBS order at the start of the month. And
Yes.
so instead of someone working that out manually, so different people have set up, so you can set up a reasonably sophisticated process
Yeah.
without doing bite right. But we find people tend to do it manually. So we automate that whole process. So, and those bulk orders actually represent approximately 50% of your PBS lines for the month, believe it or not. So it's important that stores do some of these sort of deals. So that sort of process, we'll automate it.
Mm-hmm.
So when we go to price, and how much are we going to buy? So for example, the system never wants to buy, say, more than 30 days worth of stock in general. Let's say in general. So for drugs, we only like to keep about a fortnight's worth of stock,
Yeah.
because our wholesalers are next day suppliers. So anyone that's a next day vendor, our ordering algorithm is more conservative. Where the vendors not next day, where you've got like your Blackmores, or where you got what we call the directs. And obviously, if something's only got a forecast of one, but it takes, a week to 10 days to come in, you want to keep more than one on the shelf to try and create volume. So we'll have a different algorithm for those sort of orders. So we'll buy maybe 3 months worth of stock.
Mm-hmm.
And for ourselves, we be able to achieve deals. So the algorithm will purchase very conservatively. And then when it realizes that there is a deal available, the algorithm will keep scaling up until it gets to 3 months. And if it's within that 3 month window, we assume it's a good order. If it goes beyond 3 months, it will potentially still suggest it, but it'll never automate out. So that's where we're giving that, we need that interaction with the staff member, and they'll make a conscious decision about it. So correct, it's looking for where's the most cost effective place to buy it, and also the most cost effective way to buy it, as in from a volume perspective. All stores will have a preferred vendor, and we set the system up so it goes to their preferred vendor, and then it goes to their direct vendors. And if there are out of stocks, those out of stocks will then go to the other vendors, which are their backup wholesalers. So we try and steer it that way, because that's how you run a shop. You're not there trying to. It's not about penny pinching. It's about getting routines in place with your preferred partners, because
Yes.
they're supporting you. You support them, and then there will be some expensive molecules that people do prefer to buy from a particular vendor. And we have processes around that to enable that, rather than people, manually doing things. So there's a lot of moving parts. And given that a store's probably got about, 10,000 items in it, we've been doing it for long enough, and we know where the gaps are. So that's it in a nutshell on how time, price, where it's going to go.
Um, correct me if I'm wrong, but I heard that when we had the great Ozempic out of stock,
Oh, yes, sir.
I heard that IPA pharmacies may not have been affected as the rest of the industry. Like IPA pharmacies aren't as affected by out of stocks as much. Correct
Look,
me if
you,
I'm wrong.
it's look, we need the store needs to interact a little bit more. And some of the stores actually use the system to the point where it's like, I suppose, they're playing the piano. So some of our users are exceptional, and they can quickly pick up on where the stock is, because we do with the suppliers. A number of the wholesalers do provide us with their stock on hands for the different DCs, so we can actually, when we calculate orders, we want to make sure that there is stock there for them, especially when you're looking at range deals, because if the items that you really need aren't available, you don't want to transmit the order, because the top-up lines you don't need. So given that, and when it comes to items which are like constrained supply, so especially during COVID, there was a whole lot of lines which were constrained supply. And you're not sure when the warehouses are going to unpack that stock. So you're either constantly on the website trying to get it, and you can't back order them. So we're a little bit cheeky in that we have a separate order for these orders. So it's a constrained supply order. It calculates every day. It calculates every half hour, but we'll automatically transmit that maybe 4 times a day, because we're not sure when they're going to unpack it. So we just keep challenging it and keep sending it, or you can manually push the button. So it's always there. It goes, you need stock, so you can. So we do that. So that definitely helps. Another thing that we do is when there's price decreases, we actually separate those items out to a separate order. So the user knows there is going to be a price decrease. Do you want to send the order, yes or no? So they're not filtering through their one big order. So we separate orders out into logical components that help people, review their orders. Or a lot of our stores don't actually review their orders; the orders just go. So, whether it's constrained supply stock or whether it's DDs or fridge lines, we can make it bespoke for people, so they can, because everyone's got their own little nuances on how they like their orders set up. So we're pretty good during COVID for our whole cohort, because we used to have we still do have a centralized warehouse for generic drugs. It only took me 3 hours, and I did I can't remember, I think it was like a $3 million order straight into our warehouse. I know that's a bit cheeky, and John, why'd you pinch all the stock? But I actually purchased stock on behalf of all my members and had it there ready for them. And I could do that because it's a centralized system. We can make a decision quickly. And that's what these sort of systems provide, because I knew all my end users were going to take that stock. It wasn't a guess. It was based on logic.
So IPA provides a number of supports to our members, technology being one of them. So Bite Right is technology that's available to all IPA members. When it comes to implementing within the pharmacy, what do I need to have in place before I pick up the phone to call you, number one? And should I be calling you when I have 2 pharmacies, or can I call you when I just got one?
No, we cater to single pharmacies and then to bigger groups. So we don't only just do it for IPA. We actually, our product's very vanilla in that we have external groups that use they do nothing else with IPA, but they run their own group, and we just provide the IT infrastructure or bits and pieces that they won't build up for themselves, so they can actually work as if it was an IPA store, or even one of my own stores. So that's absolutely not a problem. So IPA, non-IPA, we're there to help with the stores, whether you got one or many. One store, even on one store, we've got a lot of single store operators that we put on. The beauty of Bite Right, because we're not changing people's POS systems, we sit sort of on top of it or to the side of it. We actually install, have it running in the background, and we're not changing any of your normal processes. And then once we install, we can actually profile your stock We can see how many, what you negative stock on hand, excessive stock. We can see what we know what you intentionally stock on a daily basis. So we know we've got a very good idea of what your product range is, and our team works through that with you. We've gone from a team of 2 years ago of about a dozen people to 28 now. The hard bits for us are, when we ask people, what are your vendors? What are your account numbers? And then we have to rework that because people don't like filling out forms. They hate it. So we try and do as much in the background as possible to make it a very simple, easy solution. It's definitely not plug and play. And as much as I wish it is, and maybe if I had a bigger budget, I could venture down that way of plug and play. But it's just changing behaviors is probably the hardest thing, Melody, when we actually implement processes. This is it. I used to do that. Why are you doing that? That's the hard part for us, and we're there to work with people.
Have
we failed? Yeah, we've failed sometimes, but by far the majority is we do very well. The whole team in the pharmacy needs to be on the journey. It can't be driven by one person can drive it, but we need the team to be on board. They've got to see the benefits of it. They've got to understand in 3 months, 6 months, what's going to be in front of them, what they're looking at, and how they manage their biggest asset, their stock.
So as we conclude the podcast, I've just got one more question from myself, and then you'll get a question from a team member within the IPA Bite Right team. And then I will ask you a question from ChatGPT. With your journey from where you started to where you are now, and all that you have done and accomplished, what advice would you give a young pharmacist or a business owner who wanted to leverage technology to optimize their operations? What one key element would you want to impart to them?
Key element. With leaning towards technology, I believe key thing is you got to be persistent, because a lot of the times people give up on technology. They find that the hump you got to get over to get technology to start working for you can be a difficult hump, and can be very easy to give up. And I think that's why people don't get enough out of their POS systems. They give up too easily, and you need to commit to a journey, especially when it comes to IT, whether it's implementing a new point of sale system or some of the professional services that you're doing. You've got to take ownership, and it's going to be tough. Nothing's easy. Like what I've realized as I've got older, irrespective of how big a problem there is, you're going to wake up the next day and you're just going to go fight it again with a fresh head. And that's the most important thing. It's not doom and gloom. It may be, but that's just at a point. And you've just got to say, I'll do this, and you just work. And that's what I've done. I've just worked my way through it. Start again. I hit a reset button every morning, and I go, okay, here I go, brand new. Just keep fighting away. You just got to be persistent, because I think the big wins are out. The harder the problem is, obviously the bigger the win, and that comes down to you just being persistent at chipping away at it.
So from Marty, we'll share who is actually part of your team. You mentioned her name. She is the Bite Right Operations Manager. You may have touched on this question briefly, but has tech always been your passion? And how did you manage to shoehorn it into a pharmaceutical career? Please note, I had to Google what shoehorn meant in this context. So I do have a definition if you would like one.
I've heard of it, but I've never looked up the definition of it. I'm guessing I know what it is, but I suppose when I used to really enjoy mucking around with the point of sale system, because I wanted it to do everything for me. So I was with Mountaintop at the time, and I think the chap's name was David. I used to hassle him. I used to ring him up, David, I'm trying to do this, or why is that happening? And then the more you use things, you see the little gaps in stuff. So I knew technology would help me. And then from there, I realized I couldn't get any of my deals into it. Okay, what am I going to do now? So I used to live in spreadsheets. So I'd get all the deals from the reps and put them in a spreadsheet and try and work out how to do the orders. And this was back in 95, believe it or not. So, and we didn't do this till 2008. So back in 95, 96, 97, I'd be in spreadsheets trying to do stuff. And Excel wasn't what it is today. Excel was a very, it was a fantastic product, but today you had 65,000 rows back then. Today we've got 1 million rows in Excel. So, that was sort of, I loved it. I love, I like things where there's no gray. It's on or off. It's this or that. So, and that's what technology is to a certain extent. So I did that more and more. And I suppose in our partnership, Steve's a million miles away from that sort of stuff. He doesn't enjoy it. Michael's not in that zone. So I sort of just took it on, and more was expected of me to make things work. So, the reason why it's worked and no external third party person's created such a product is because you've got to know the nuances of pharmacy. You've got to understand you even though we're selling widgets, we're just selling the same stuff, but you've got to know when someone says is omeprazole, you've got to put context to it. What is the product? If they have too much of it, is it a problem or not? You've got to, as opposed to, a Maxilon ampule or something like that. You've got to know, that's on a doctor's bag. Would they want to keep it? Probably not. But then it's from a medical center. But you've got to, it's that interpretation. So I can't program. I'm that the product owner that understands what the end user needs and what the guy's got to program. And I go, this is what they need. This is the interpretation of it. So, that's why I've managed to make technology, the product shoehorn, as you've said, into pharmacy, because I wouldn't have been able to make this product unless I was a pharmacist or knew how pharmacy operated. So there are probably so many other opportunities out in so many businesses, but you've got to know the nuances of that business.
Now, question from ChatGPT before we say thank you to you today, John. If you could automate any part of your daily life, the way you have automated pharmacy inventory, what would it be?
Oh, wow. Answering emails.
Oh, really? Smart one, actually. Now that you've said it, me too. Me too.
I live on ChatGPT. I love it. I subscribe to it straight away. And the only reason why my emails are literate now, I'll just put down all my thoughts and bits and pieces, and then I get it to tidy it up. I reread and I go, yep, that makes sense. And I've got to say, when ChatGPT first came out, it's going on 2 years now. It was January, and I had to do a frequently asked questions, frequently asked questions and answers. And I'm a slow writer, and I don't write very well. So I managed to do it in one day, and I did like I think it was like 20 pages of frequently asked questions, because I got to use that to actually help tidy stuff up, make it, read correctly and so forth. So you still need user input, but emails, yeah. I need something that thinks that how I think, and build it into my emails. And I don't think we're far away. I think it's already there. I've just got to spend the time.
Read my mind, reply that email as how I would reply it. That's exactly. Once you said it, I was like 100% subscribe. John, thank you so much for your time today. What led to today's conversation was actually a conversation I had with my former preceptor. She recently got Bite Right in her pharmacy, and I was speaking to her last week, and she was like, oh my gosh, Bite Right is the most brilliant bit of technology I have ever used. And she is onto technology, like 100%. She's onto it. And I think you may have put Bite Right into her pharmacy a couple of months ago, into one. She does own multiple. And she's like, I'm going to get it for the next. I'm not stopping here. I'm getting it for the other pharmacies. This is the best piece of technology I've ever had. I've ever owned. Oh my gosh, it saves me time. I'm talking to my patients. I've got more time to do other things. I can actually log on remotely and access everything I need to do. And I was like, oh, you know that Bite Right is an product, that obviously John is part of the IPA team. He's actually one of the directors. I might actually have a little word with him and see, hey, what's going on in your camp? And how are you making lives better?
No. I got to say, the hardest thing for me over the last 2 years is I used to talk to every single customer. That was my job. I spoke to everyone, help with the implementation. And the hardest thing for me to let go is
that bit.
I don't have the time to talk to everyone now.
Yeah.
But if anyone's got like issues or quirky things, I'll give them a buzz. I'll give them my mobile. Just buzz me because, I'll always answer.
My current employer calls you on the ready, he tells me, because we've also got Bite Right where I work currently as well. You're everywhere, John. If you don't have Bite Right, I think, you're missing out.
It's I'm obviously super happy. Been through a lot of hard work from the whole team just to get it into more stores and provide that service. But it was sort of a dream. Would we ever get it beyond Fred Next? And the fact that we've managed to do it's
amazing.
Super duper for me.
Yeah.
My sons, who are now like in their mid to later 20s, they used to see me at night when they were young in spreadsheets, and they go, "I can't believe you're still doing the same thing. What are you doing, Dad?" They laugh, but yeah.
It's a passion.
And this actually morphed them. They're both in IT.
Oh, really? Oh,
they
that's
ended up going,
You can hire them to help with Bite Right. You can hire them.
Exactly. If they're pulling their weight, it's like, come here.
Pay me back. The reverse of child support. But it's been wonderful talking to you today. I hope you had fun.
Yeah, it's been great, Melody. Thank you. Thanks for my first podcast. So, wow.
Oh, you did good. You did absolutely good. And we started talking about Bite Right. It's such a big topic. There's so much more to dive into about your life and all that you do. So it's been great. It's absolutely been great. And we hope to see you soon.
Thanks, Melody. No, thank you very much.
At Independent Pharmacies of Australia Group, we're dedicated to supporting a network of leading independent and bannered pharmacies nationwide with a vision to connect all member pharmacies under the IPA national brand. Recognized by Australians for elevating community healthcare to meet local needs. Thank you for joining us today on the Pharmacy Podcast. We appreciate your support in our mission to shape a thriving and patient-centric pharmacy industry. For more information about Independent Pharmacies of Australia, you can visit our website, ipagroup.com, or stay connected with us on social media. Thank you once again for joining us. We look forward to welcoming you back soon as we continue our journey together, enhancing community healthcare